Call the meeting to order. First order of business, the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Consider of any changes, additions, or removals to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay. Article 3, approve minutes of previous meetings, September 2nd, 2024, September 12th, 2024, and October 10th, 2024.
Motion to accept them as written.
Second, open for discussion. Being no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed, you guys have it. Comments from citizens? Okay, department head reports. We have any questions on any of them?
I did notice Nick Mealy attended that Parks and Rec annual meeting there and talking about master plan and kind of those improvements, which I think is awesome, especially in the conversations we've had with the tennis courts and kind of these one-off things, the dog park. I think that's a great vein to continue on and probably a good thing as we move forward for other departments, kind of those bigger ticket items to start thinking about.
Yeah, and he, Nick and I had kind of talked, I believe it's tomorrow, he's sitting on a webinar with Cherry Nicole, our new grants administrator, that is going to look at the possibility of trying to secure funding for some sort of like a hiking trail system out in West Hill, behind West Hill, where the waterfall is, et cetera, like that. So kind of getting us back into that, we talked about the dog parks there, but revitalizing West Hill a little bit. So seeing if we can do some of that, which would be it's a jumping off point. So I'm glad he's taking the lead on that, which is a good thing.
Anything else? Moving on to 6, bid to review and possibly award Dorsey Park Tennis Court.
So we have see that the park was put out to bid for a couple of different options. We got 3 bids with, wide variety from anything from 86,000, which, is basically a complete overlay resurfacing of that, down to, they were given 2 options, an overlay and then a full surfacing, which is what we really want to go to. Advantage Tennis, and talking with Nick, Advantage Tennis is not the low bid, but second in at 68,000 is the one we want to go to for. They provided a very good scope of what they want to do. They were also the only company that did a site visit. So to be honest with you, that is something that
They were the only company
that came and did the site visit. So in speaking with Mr. Mealy, the bid for 68,000 is probably the most advantageous for the town.
And what did we put in that from ARPA funds?
Believe we had for between the town and village, because that was a split, there was some from the town, some of the village, it was 90,000. But that was in all for the Dorsey Park project. So the town was 65,000, 30, so 95 total from the village. And Nick, correct me, Advantage Tennis at 68,000, correct?
That was related.
Yeah.
Asphalt.
Nick,
No, I thought the overlay was 33.
do me a favor, Nick. So the higher amount is when they put the asphalt on it.
Yes.
So that's an additional $20,000 to $25,000.
Okay.
Advantage Tennis did look at the court, and they suggested that you didn't have to put asphalt over it. The asphalt was in good enough condition.
So we're looking at the 33.
30,
Yeah,
that's correct.
That's what I remember in the meeting. 33.
Yeah, 33.
Okay.
So the advantage tennis, although it's the second highest Vermont resurfacing, record was 32.3. Advantage tennis with the overlay was, that sounds better, 33,000,
Mhm.
which then
Okay.
leave us 64 and change.
Okay.
And then, is that something, I know there was some pretty active tennis pickleball people, they, kind of meets what they're looking for?
Yeah, I talked with them and had them kind of look at it, and they're good with that.
Awesome.
They've been to our meetings multiple times, so this is, they are happy with this, the 33 from the Advantage Tennis.
Great.
That's great.
Both sides, tennis and pickleball.
Do I have a motion on that?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
any other discussion? All those in favor of granting Advantage tennis overlay for 33,000 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed, guys have it. Pulling field restoration bid.
So this was the piece we've been talking about, obviously, that was overwhelmingly decided that we were not going to rebuild the Little League field in the location that it currently is. So, in working with Nick and talking about what our options were, we obviously used Dorsey Park for everything this past spring, and worked for the most part. I know it was trying, Nick did a really good job scheduling, moving parts, when you have everybody from the little guys, the K1 and 2s to 12 and under trying to be on one field, that can be a challenge. Nick did a great job of getting those in, utilizing the field, but you not only have games, you have practices, et cetera. So the plan, as we looked, Nick was able to source it out and utilizing Pullman Field, which, we looked at a lot of different options, and that was essentially taking the high school diamond that's there and converting that in one way, shape, or form to, a regulation high school field and up. From high school to professional, all the bases are 90 feet, mounds are 60 feet, 6 inches. Obviously, don't have a high school team here anymore. That field up until the summer was relatively underutilized. So we looked at what would be, could we reshape it? Could we remodel it, et cetera, et cetera. By happenstance, and, thankfully for the town, as I've said before, we have a Legion team that's playing there now, which is fantastic. It's, in Babe Ruth. And with that level of baseball taking place, we don't want to jeopardize the game, by having a portable mound, et cetera, et cetera. So in talking with Nick, we can leave that field as is, and out in center field, essentially install a smaller field with, rather than actually full dirt infield, just put base cutouts in a mound, part of a backstop, which can be utilized for the younger, the kindergartens, the T-balls, the kids that are just learning the game. They could have a game there. They could practice there. And it still won't affect or really, jeopardize the high school and Legion field as it stands. And we talked today actually about, because you will have some dirt cutouts for the bases in the outfield. Once the season's over, we could very easily get maybe some sturdy pieces of, artificial turf that could be placed over them. It would keep the dirt intact and keep the weeds from growing, as well as protect it for the guys when they're playing on the high school game. So I think that was really, we kicked this around for a while. And I think for $18,000 to do that, and then look at what we can do with the Little League field that's down there, whatever we're going to do there. This is a win-win. This money is funded by the Vermont Community Foundation. It's the same foundation that helped us pay for the dog park. So the 18,000 comes in under the number we had. So we still have some money to do improvements, whether it be there or to the Little League field at Dorsey, because it's still kind of covered under the same umbrella. So, this was.
So using Pullen and Dorsey for Little League.
We talked, I think,
Spring.
and Nick can speak to it better, having that spot for
The younger
younger
ones.
kids to practice. And I think the biggest challenge this year was practice space.
Yeah, having a soccer field, you can practice basically anywhere. But when you're trying to teach kids baseball or softball, you don't have bases to have for a field, it makes practice really challenging. You can do a lot of outfield drills, but running the bases, hitting and turning plays for the infield makes it really challenging without a field. So I think this plan, having the base cutouts, you can have T-ball practice, you can have the older kids can still practice there. The bases are the same distance, but it just gives you another space that isn't going to.
The functional space that's not gonna
Yeah.
flood, and it doesn't have to be in an emergency. You could play a game there of any age if you wanted to. You could play a 12 and under game there if you had to, very easily. It just gives us another viable option and gives Nick another asset that, you know, we can invest this money knowingly that one, we have another space. It's not going to be damaged in a flood. And we're also not, and we've spoken with, you know, this kind of all came together when the Legion was forming as well. So I had multiple conversations with Post 36 because the Legion baseball team in Ludlow is a good thing, you know, and that's a great thing for the town. And we didn't want to, you know, put them in, you know, reduce the, you know, that's a beautiful field there. So we don't want to do anything to reduce how beautiful it is. This will have a very minimal effect. You know, the positive is going to be much better than what, you know, we would do if we took the actual baseball diamond and just made it into like a convertible field. Then it would be a place that nobody wants to come play. Teams like older teams want to play here. The lights, the atmosphere is just a good thing. It's a good thing for the town.
And do they, Legion, Babe Ruth, do they cover field maintenance, lights and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the lights are
Making money,
minimal,
but-
you know, the conditioning and stuff of the field was covered. It's a very good,
He funded replacing the lights.
they funded
Yeah.
the lights and there's a storage shed there. It's really kind of a good hand in hand. And because the good thing for us is, you know, the more like any field, especially baseball, because of the dirt and the diamonds, the more it's used, the less maintenance it is. Because you're not out there trying to dig up the dirt. You know, if somebody doesn't use it for a full year, you can't tell where the infield starts and the outfield.
And it was
ends.
cool to come into town, see the lights going, people there, and that excitement is.
I went to a
is cool.
game, turned around and drove back just to look at the lights because it brought me back to like my childhood playing. So I'm like, oh, that's a good feeling.
The
So
hot day that you were umpiring.
that day I umpired there, I thought I was going down. Like it was hot. You know, so
What's the feeling of the board?
Make a motion to approve the Slate Rock Timber LLC bid at 18,000.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Being no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed, ayes have it. Approval and request licenses and permits. So first is Terra Italian Steakhouse liquor license.
you have that. So that is for an outside consumption permit, first class restaurant and third class restaurant.
We have a motion to approve that.
Move forward with it.
In a second.
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed, ayes have it. Review letter of interest for open seat of Ludlow Mount Holly School Board.
You have this letter from Caitlin O'Neill Benson for her interest in the position, the open seat on the Ludlow Mount Holly Unified School District. Unfortunately, I received a message today from Caitlin. She had to go to Connecticut for a family emergency, otherwise she would be here. I told her that wouldn't be a problem. You know, and knowing Caitlin, I think this is a good fit for the school board. We'd be fortunate to have her in that position, so.
I make a motion to, is it approval or a recommendation?
Recommendation.
Recommend Katie Benson for the open Ludlow Mount Holly School District.
Second, Scott. Yeah. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed, guys have it. Consider approval application for Divided Sky for the annual 5K race.
So this is, as I said, I believe this is the third or fourth year that
Yeah.
Divide Sky has done this.
Yeah.
It'll be held on May 17th. Chief Billings is on board, you know, as normal, it goes up Rod and Gun Club Road, Buttermilk, circles back, ends up at Jackson Gore. Always a very well-attended event. A lot of positive things that seem to be coming out of that, so I would, you know, it has my full support for approval. Had no issues in the past, you know, 2 years that I've been here and 3 years that I've been involved with it.
I'll make a motion to move forward with it.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed, guys have it. Consider approval of town local hazard mitigation plan.
So this is the, you've had it, you've been working with regional planning, and Malia is here, and Malia, I will turn the floor over to you. Just to touch base, if there's, you give a quick little update, and if the board has any questions regarding this, that would be great.
Malia, could you?
Just go with the mic.
Thank you.
Hello. Okay. Hi, my name is Malia Cordero. I'm working with the Mount Escutney Regional Commission. So we're the RPC that helps out Ludlow with a lot of its municipal planning. I'm sure most of you have heard from us, but I've been working with Brendan and some of the emergency management folks, and also some of the community volunteer groups in the town as well to put together the local hazard mitigation plan. It's a 5-year municipal plan that the town does every 5 years to basically list out the different implementation actions that the town would like to pursue or look into further for hazard mitigation. For this plan, we focused a lot on flooding, but we also touched a bit on other things like invasive species. But flooding was the major thing. We started writing this actually in May, but then with the floods, that delayed things a little bit and it added a lot of more new content to add to the plan. So we updated that. And then we have it ready for adoption now. It's been sent up to Vermont Emergency Management. It has to be basically scored against this rubric that comes from FEMA to have, make sure it contains all the required elements to be approved by FEMA. And then once you get the signature from them, then that would up your town ERAF rate, which is the Emergency Relief Assistance Fund. That's the reimbursement that towns get after a federal disaster. Right now, I'm not sure what the town's rate is off the top of my head, but I know that when you adopt your hazard mitigation plan, it bumps it up a little bit. And that can end up adding to a lot of money when there's substantial damages. So definitely want to have this plan in place and here tonight to receive any comments or any suggestions on revisions, etc. Otherwise, we're ready. I think we're good for adoption.
And to Malia's point that the town just received, I think last week, $1 million as part of our ERAF payment from the state, which is the emergency assistance. So once this is adopted, if there is another event, that number will increase. Goes from between, I think it's
Up to 17.
12 up to 17.9%, which helps to offset the 75% that we get from FEMA.
River corridors are the other thing. River corridor protections, those can also bring up the rate. And I think the town has been talking about.
We have, we're
Yeah.
in the middle of that right now.
So different than FEMA money, but
It's
Tied
affected by
slightly.
FEMA, it's the.
It's like
basic-
the state's match level.
Yeah,
Basically.
it's the fund, and we have that check in hand.
and that
which-
$1 million is not FEMA money.
No, that is
Yep.
ERAF, state of Vermont, which is based off of a number of different factors, one including the hazard mitigation plan. So if you have, you know, in the event of federal disaster, you have this, you know, usually 75% from FEMA you get. If you have all the boxes checked and you can get 17.9% from ERAF, then you have a much smaller window that the town is making up in funds. So I mean, $1 million is great, don't get me wrong. But you know, in these events, as we can see, to have that money in hand, it is vital right now.
And the other thing to point out is just any projects that were listed out specifically in the plan, we want to have those down. Even if we end up not pursuing them as a town, we still want to have them on our sort of wish list, just because that can open you up for potential grants and funding, that sort of thing. Like when grants are looked at in terms of eligibility, this can be an extra, 2 points on your scoring sheet sort of thing, having this plan in place.
Any questions from the board? We have a motion to approve.
Make a motion that we approve the 24 to 29 local hazard mitigation plan.
We have a second.
Second.
Open for any other discussion. Being no other discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank
A
you.
lot of work that.
And I'll get a cleaned up copy to you later this week.
Great.
You know, like the draft one, I'll take it out and I'll.
Then
write
it will
things
go
down.
to the trustees as well.
Okay. Review and discuss yearly lease with Okemo of Stearns Pet.
So that you have the lease in front of you, which is the yearly lease that we do for the blue lot, also known as Stearns Pit, we do with Okemo. Based on a 5-year average, so that, what is the amount is $85,352.70, and that is based on a 5-year CPI average. And obviously CPI, the average, it's always gonna be no less than 3 or no more than 5%. I believe this came down to be 4.1%.
Okay. It's a feeling on the board.
There's been rumors that Okemo's do we know if Okemo is charging for parking?
I have not heard anything about that, and I think that would be pretty, I mean, I can check for sure, but I have not heard that. And I think
They
that,
can charge on the lease property,
and
they charge on lease property,
it would probably have to be in the lease.
right?
That would have to be in the lease for that parking, but I have not heard.
So if they decided to,
Mhm.
if it's not on the lease, they can't charge.
Not in
on the
that
new lot,
parking lot. That's.
Unless they come back with us with a new lease,
It would have to be part of the lease.
which I would wanna.
Mhm.
chunk
That'd
up.
be a different story if it was charged per car parking there, then I think the board would have to look at all options, but. It would have to be spelled out in this lease that they were charging for parking there, because that would be, I think the liability there would become a little different as well.
Once that's noted.
Is there ever, I mean, I guess it's, you know, a conversation with Ron and Jeff, but like, you know, there's kind of some, hey, we'll take care of this plowing, or Okemo will take care of that for us. They'll cover some traffic things. Is there anything else that like, that would ever, you know, oh, it'd be really great if they plowed this, or they didn't, you know, we did that, or anything like that?
I mean, right now, it seemed, you know, in talking with Ron and from my, you know, again, I've been in this position for one winter. And to be perfectly honest with you, it was a winter coming off of a hellacious summer. So this is going to give me a little bit more of an overview this year, to be honest with you, to dive in and say, all right, like those things. But from what I hear, you know, from Ron and working with Ron and Kenny there, things work pretty well.
Yeah.
You know, they do, you know, traffic control goes pretty well. You know, the PD's in and out relatively quickly. We work, you know, pretty seamlessly with the ambulance. Last year was a good year. So the relationship, as though, you know, sometimes from the outside looking in, people go, oh, this and this between the town, it's good, you know, but this would be really one of my first years being like, all right, where you can play a little offense, and there could be some things, there could be nothing.
Yeah, cause I see the $85,000, not that it's, you know, nothing, but you know, the plowing of those roads is like
Absolutely.
pretty high value, and
Yeah.
it works in their best interest for their guests and things like that. But if there's anything like those kind of partnership
Mhm.
negotiations, that would be
Absolutely, and I
beneficial.
think that's something that Ron and I will look at a little more in depth as I get my head around it a little bit more this winter, you know.
It would be nice to have a true number
Absolutely. Of what that costs.
for everything.
Yeah.
Not just the 85,000, but
Sure.
what they do.
Yeah, and like what is, and I guess, you know, it seems like they pay for our police officers to do the traffic, and like, what is that,
Mhm.
that value too?
I can work on getting.
And if that's a strain on the town's
Mhm.
resources, you know, I'm sure they could, you know, they train people to
Absolutely.
do that.
You hear that quite a bit, Brennan, that 85 is not enough, but that's not a true number.
It's not, and that, you know, I think that is 85, maybe again, whether that's enough or is not, I think that's a perception number a little bit. You know what I mean? And I think task me with really by the end of next year, I can come back and say, this is what it costs for us. And are there any strains on the resources, and taking in what our strains are and what we get back, and, you know, coming back with a number. Is it 85? Is it 100? Is it less? I don't know, you know, but I think that's something we could very easily. And, you know, some of it probably varies a little bit too. Does it snow a lot? How much are we plowing? So it's, you know, there's gonna be some room for error there. But, you know, we have a very open dialogue with, I'm fortunate, we have a very open line of communication with Mountain Ops and the mountain right now, so it kind of, it's working well.
And does Okemo buy the sand and salt they use for the access road?
We build them.
You build them, yeah, so I'm sure that's a
Yeah.
hefty cost.
Need to update this, so,
Yeah, I'll have you sign it.
not as vice chair.
I know, so, well, if we approve it, then like, you can just come down and sign it.
Okay. Feeling of the board?
You want a motion to move forward? Louise?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Have a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Guys opposed? Guys have it. Appropriation request for FY 26 budget.
So you have all the appropriation requests that were put out. You have an additional one, Green Up Vermont. So those appropriation requests that you have listed need an approval to all go into and be presented as part of the FY 25-26 budget. With the exception, I don't want to say exception, but Fletcher Memorial Library, you will see that they had a appropriation request where they were increasing their appropriation by 10, they were requesting an increase of $10,000 this year. Because it's a change, it needs to be voted on and be part of the warning. So it needs to be re-voted on at town meeting, just the increase of that appropriation.
The rest of these are unchanged.
Correct.
so they will.
We were all last year.
The town will approve the increase and then approve the appropriation.
Correct.
And technically, the town can, well, I guess we're not voting on it, Matt.
We're not voting on we're not, all you're voting on right now is voting to move them to
The ballot.
the ballot and budget
Accept them.
for town meeting.
And can they change them at town meeting?
The ones that are being voted on the floor
Yeah.
can be changed.
Okay,
Because the budget, obviously, because we vote our budget here on the floor, anything could be changed.
Okay, what's the feeling of the board?
I think it looks good. The one thing I do want to mention on the record now that I have this platform is I think the services that Okemo Valley Television provides are highly undervalued. Brendan got a chance to see that this summer when he had to set everything up, and you know, I think there's a lot of value that they provide by it's gone from just filming it to all of a sudden tech support with the Zoom, and there's a lot there. I think Ludlow is one of many towns that don't necessarily show that, but
To your point, no, so all the upgrades that were done in here, you know, if you watch the new meetings on Zoom, there's a new camera behind you that when someone's speaking, it faces here, so we're looking at the front of them. It's monitored, you know, new equipment up here, new speakers, microphones. Downstairs in the Howard Barton conference room, there's 2 new cameras, microphones, a new flat screen TV that's mounted on the wall that can be used for Zoom, so we can hold smaller meetings down there. And a lot of that was paid for by ARPA funds.
yes,
But That's the easy part.
Yeah,
We sat here and said, this needs the money. Hey, Patrick, he's here, right?
yeah,
Patrick's the guy that oversaw the whole
yeah. and
installation
that's-
of all of this
Mhm.
and spent the time with the installers and did it. So to your point, it's not just putting the TV out, it's just the support that they get the town. So
Yeah.
that's me,
Yeah,
I
So
was
there's a
gonna,
lot
I was gonna
behind
bring
the
some of this
scenes.
up later, but this is
Yeah.
the perfect time because Patrick, he oversaw how this all, well-needed upgrade. So kudos and thank you. In full, correct. You and they were here. Thank you.
but other than that, I think it all looks good, and
You making a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the appropriation request for FY 26 as listed with Fletcher Memorial Library being warned at town meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, open for any other discussion? Being no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed? Guys have it. So ambulance operations guide, critical care provider
So
discussion.
this is kind of a two-parter. One, you have the Ludlow Ambulance Service Standard Operating Guidelines. These were, had worked on these in the spring. It really just, if you've gone through them, I just put them here for, it's just more some minor updates for our SOGs that we did. So I didn't know, any questions on those? If not, again, pretty standard. I'm just looking for an adoption of those, the updated regs. And that is, again, just the Ludlow Ambulance Service Standard Operating Guidelines. I don't know if anyone had any questions. Pretty boilerplate for what we do, but there was just some minor tweaks and changes, numbers, mileage, et cetera, that we had to change some things that state guidelines required that we removed, but nothing that was, going to change operational strategies for the ambulance.
So do we need a vote on that?
We would.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the Ludlow Ambulance Service Standard Operating Guidelines.
Have a second.
Second.
Open for any other discussion. Being no other discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed? Ayes have it.
Second piece of it is just a preliminary discussion, critical care provider discussion. It has been talked about. I know I talked a little bit with Noah about it, and one of our, as a town, especially with emergency services in any portion of town, you try to find smaller ways to drive revenue a little bit. One opportunity we have is looking at critical care interfacility transport, which essentially, and I was lucky enough to ask Mary to come here because, I'm not going to start talking over my head, which I can usually do. But, it's essentially a service that would provide, as it says, transport from hospital to hospital. And this would be necessarily, Mary is right now is our critical care certified paramedic. This is not, what we're looking at is not necessarily, because obviously in all transparency, there's a lot of money in it. And there's a need for it in this area. And what we would essentially look at and talking with Mary and Stephanie, who is currently out on maternity leave, but we've had these conversations before they came back, is this something that the town could entertain to do, one day a week? And it wouldn't be your transports of, I need to go from Springfield Hospital to Dartmouth or Springfield. This would be a serious need where someone has to go from, a local hospital, Rutland, to maybe a Boston, or because they need that care. And that is, something Mary's worked for in getting her critical care certification, because there's not a lot of this. So this is, again, very limited preliminary discussion because there's a lot to this. Staff, equipment, what it would look like. The money is great. It would be great if we could establish a stream of revenue that could help offset a cost of an ambulance, cost of new equipment. But what we can't do is we don't want it to be at the detriment to our community already. We cover a wide territory and do a heck of a job of doing it with, multiple ambulances, multiple staff members, but that's a struggle. So you wouldn't want to be providing a guaranteed transport, whether it's once a week and have it be at the detriment of someone in the surrounding community who's calling in the middle of an emergency. So something to kick on. And Mary, if you just want to talk briefly about exactly what a critical care transport is. And
Sure.
if the board has any questions, again, preliminary discussion, this is something that we kind of need to continue to talk about, but I think it's something we should visit, so.
Yeah, I mean, like Brendan said, there's not a lot of critical care transport services in the state, let alone Southern Vermont. Right now, there's none in Southern Vermont. So there is an extreme need for it, but there's cost behind it. With that being said, once we got it up and running, we could make good amount of revenue for the town and for the service. But I mean, like I said, there's none of it happening in Southern Vermont right now. And when it comes to critical care transport, it's not your basic bringing someone from hospital A to hospital B for, say, like dialysis. These are patients who are on like multiple infusions. They're on a ventilator usually. So it takes a lot, and it can't be just a paramedic. It needs to be critical care certified with sometimes an additional paramedic or an EMT. But like Brendan said, we want to try to do it as a trial period and see where it can get us. But there is a huge need for it in our area. So, I mean, there could be potential with it.
I think it's great to pursue
So
any
I
revenue.
guess the question that I'm kind of, is this something just on the surface right now that the board would like to see us come back with, like, this is what it would look like if we were to go down this.
We need to have some numbers.
Yeah, these are the numbers that it would cost. Obviously, there's gonna be some startup costs. We've talked a little bit about some of the startup costs. It's not exorbitant as to what we would get in return. But is this something that you'd like to see? We'd have to do the research. These are the numbers. This is what could be, expected, and go and come back, a little later on and see if we want to continue that. Is that something this board wants to do?
You're just looking for an okay to do some more.
Yeah, just looking for, I just want to know if you guys, if we're like, no, don't even waste your time, then we won't. But if you're good with it, we'll continue
I
doing
think
it.
it's a good
I'm
thing.
good with it.
I think
Okay,
it's a good thing.
Yeah.
great.
And I mean, in terms of some of those numbers, I mean, for a startup, like, for instance, we need a ventilator. That's probably our most expensive thing we need. The nice part is, since there's not a huge, there's not many services in Southern Vermont, that we may be able to work with the hospitals to borrow equipment while we get this off the ground. Those are possibilities for us to initially get this going. But I mean, in terms of revenue, right now, for instance, we can make almost double what we make from some of our ALS transports. So I mean, it is a big revenue drive. So I mean, we could offset a lot of those costs and be able to buy some of that equipment once it's off the ground.
Is any of that equipment, would it be beneficial to residents necessarily? Or this isn't equipment that would be beneficial for, I don't know, someone calls you guys in a home and something happened and.
I mean, a great example is just a few weeks ago, we went to Mount Holly and one of our patients is on an at-home ventilator. So I mean, if we had that, we wouldn't have to take it from their home. They'd be able to keep it in their home. It wouldn't have to travel from home to hospital and back in hopes that it doesn't get damaged in the process. So I mean, there is absolutely. And I mean, even with like our pumps that we have, like we'd have to get newer pumps, which we're in the process of doing now, but I mean, those are beneficial for us in just regular transports. So I mean, absolutely, there is a need for us to use it outside of just the CCP realm.
What's a ventilator cost?
They range right around $20,000 though. I mean, they're pricey, but in the longevity of it, I mean, from transports, you can make that back in, I'd say, like 7 to 10 transports. So I mean, it all depends on what we can get for resources from the hospital and what we can get for resources from the town.
So we'll move forward with that. We'll
Yeah.
continue
Yes.
working
Yeah.
and we'll come
Yeah.
back at probably not the November meeting because that's in 2 weeks, but soon.
Municipal manager update.
So just a few, I mentioned that we got the $1 million from ERAF to help us offset the FEMA funds. Some of those funds are starting to come a little bit. But the $1 million, that $1 million definitely helps us offset and helps us, with some of our funding and situations right now. You see the access road, being finished right now. They're putting one of the final lanes
Must have
down.
been done, 'cause they were loading the roller.
Okay, so that when I was out earlier this morning, so that is, it was a process, but glad to have that done. Dam spillway repairs for sites 3 and 5 have been underway for the last 2 weeks. I believe they're on the site 5 now, so those spillway repairs are being completed by Markowski's excavating, so that is a big, hurdle for this town, for this board, for myself to get over. The dam spillway, the major project that we've talked about, that is that engineering and rehabilitation project is underway. The engineering and design for each one of those 5 dams has begun. That's a 2-year process that's being done by Du Bois and King. So we're in the throes of that right now. That big project is underway. We have a local options tax forum Wednesday night here at 6 p.m. So we hope people will come out, and kind of give us their input, thoughts. We'll talk a little bit about what the committee has talked about, what the committee has thought about what a options tax would do to benefit this town. The other piece of, that was kind of going hand in hand with me with the options tax is the merger process with the village and the town. That is moving forward. We are awaiting a draft charter for the town, which would encompass the town and the village. That is being done with our council we've been working with, is out of Montpelier. That committee is met a few times, talked about what we would look at for the village and the town merger, and now it's really getting the document and coming back and looking at it with the people involved, some of the boards, the committee, some of the department heads, the treasurer, clerk, and saying, this is correct, this is what happens, and kind of molding it together, presenting it ultimately to the select board to then go in front of the voters. Ideally, the timeline for that is to have a couple, once we have the charter in place, the draft, we'll have a number of public forums about it. Then ideally, it goes to vote in March at town meeting. If it passes, it then goes to the state and is handled by the legislation, and that could take 6 months, but really we can begin that process of moving that. So hopefully that will begin soon. The only other piece is that, is kind of brought up, and it's, kind of obviously a topic right now, is we had a major incident in town on Saturday night, which was a fire at Trailside. And that, thankfully that was called in about 8:30 on Saturday night. And we had 9 to 10 departments that responded to that call. Lasted about 6 in the morning on Sunday. Multiple agencies, the surrounding departments, fire, ambulance, PD from Ludlow were all there. Thankfully, no one was injured during it, but it has brought to light some of the problems that we face in town when it comes to, short-term rentals and rentals, because the unfortunate side is that the building that was damaged in a fire had 14 plus people in it, not permitted for that. I've said this on record, and I'll say it again, that we are very lucky that we are not dealing with a recovery of a tragic incident right now. Rather, we can use this as a learning experience and move forward, because we should be trying to protect our community, our visitors, our first responders. We've talked about this, for those of you that come down to this, we've talked about short-term rental registries here, and we've had meetings about those. And that's going to come back up. And I'll be honest with you, this incident, looking at it, this is not about the town trying to tax people. It's not about the town trying to exert an overview of, you know, the town hovering and, you know, putting regulations on you. It has nothing to do with that. This is about life safety. And for people that were there, people that rent, you know, this, we are extremely lucky. And, you know, we have a position right now where we are going full ahead to look at, you know, having potentially our, you know, our fire chief work on doing inspections of rentals. I think that that's, and I want to be clear, 14 people in that house up there did not have anything to do with the fire. That's not why it started. We don't know. But had that happened at, you know, in an over-occupied building in the middle of the night, would have had multiple casualties. And for what? So I think it feels my due diligence as a municipal manager. I think it falls to the boards that this has happened. We can be thankful that no one was injured. But if we don't circle back and say, what can we do to be better as a town to support, to protect our guests, protect our community, protect, you know, our first responders, we're not doing our job. I'm not doing mine. And again, this has nothing to do with money or, you know, regulations. Absolutely zero. Has everything to do with the safety of the people that were there. There are people in this room that were there that dealt with it. And I can probably speak for them. It was not a fun experience. You know, and to where, you know, not knowing what you're going into is not something that I think we want to set ourselves and put our community and our people in the right position moving forward. And I'll get off my soapbox because I'm gonna say will be an agenda item. I know some of you guys as well. My phone has not stopped ringing since Sunday morning about this and what is, you know, and yes, it is not a town issue, but it is, you know, we can't say, well, the state's got to deal with it. We can't do that. We have to do something to protect ourselves. So.
Right, that was a self rental. She rented it herself. The rental unit that where the fire started.
Yeah.
It was a rental unit. It wasn't through one of the local companies. It was through herself.
VRBO.
Correct,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Not to get into rental registry tonight, but what would have been different if we had one? Because when you rent a place out, you only talk to one person.
Mhm.
You have no idea who's showing up.
Correct.
So she wouldn't even have any idea who was showing up.
No, but I think the only thing that, as I said,
What would have been different if we did have a registry?
there's nothing different than the fire would have happened regardless. I
Right.
think what it is going to is that,
The inspection.
and if you're supposed to, the inspection, so people know what they're going into and having this, anything that size, I mean, for one of those units, it's advertised for 18. Something like that needs to have a sprinkler system.
I heard there was 18.
I think it was 14 that were there, but so that's
But it was
the
advertised as it holds 18.
whole sleeps 18. And so again, that's why I said the fire is gonna happen, whether it's, you know, up on the mountain or it's at a house. That's not the issue. It's knowing that does it meet the codes to have those numbers of people there? And if it's a two-way street with that, because if I'm renting to someone, I should be following the codes and standards and regulations to provide a safe place for them to rent. But also, if I'm the one that's renting, I want to know that I'm going in, that it says it sleeps 18, but you know, some of those buildings are open vaulted ceilings in there with a loft. If that happens, the way that thing was burning the other night, it was the middle of the night, and Brett saw it, it would not have been good. And again, 4 people in there, it might be the same outcome if they're asleep. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we get, you know, to have that mass with those, you know, and speaking with some of the investigators on scene with those units there, the way some of them are advertised, it's 60 people if they were advertising filled to their max.
Right.
It's something we need to look at. I'm not saying I know but I've had more people say, what are you going to do?
Right.
And if something like that happens, the people sleeping there, the bedroom configuration, people are set up with the best potential to
For
escape
survival,
that situation.
because I think it, we know that that's unfortunate that it's not, you have bedrooms and, that don't have egress. It's horrible for them, but it's also, for the people that might have to go in for.
But that doesn't matter. I've seen in the caretaking business, I've seen places that they don't even rent them out, but they're packed full of freaking beds, just because it's a family use.
And that's a different regulation. Like, I don't think we'd ever get into regulating private homes if you're not, but if it is rented,
Right.
we kind of have that obligation a little bit, and that will be a discussion. It's just, again, and I'm not
And I
making
think-
this up.
How did the phone call, what did the alarm come in on? Did it come in on a smoke through countryside? Was it a phone call?
From what I understand, it was a call to the PD that came in as a chimney fire,
A call from,
the renters.
so nothing,
So they had a fire going?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna get into the,
No,
because I don't know.
No.
I just
No, no,
know
no, no,
that
no. But that's what it came in as.
from what is, the call was a chimney fire. Within 4 to 5 minutes, it was upgraded to a fully involved structure fire. So, but the timeline is that's for the investigators and when they
right,
have their.
Whether or not it went.
And I think the state has certain codes that are you need to follow. Everyone knows that they're not being followed. And we've kind of, people are doing whatever and we're overlooking it. And, at a certain, we walked out on this time, but, something is going to happen. And I think it's our due diligence to ensure that our residents, our part-time residents, the visitors we have here can be assured that they're safe.
Yeah, and it's gonna be, it won't be easy because it's not gonna be overnight, because there's a piece that you can say this, but then how are we going to regulate it to an extent and follow up on, the examples of, well, okay, I went in and you get a certain CO for 8 people. But when I turn back around, it's rented for 18. That's a whole other mechanism that I don't even pretend that I'm gonna tell you what it is right now.
you better be sure you can regulate it.
Well,
If you go forward with it,
Oh, yeah,
because once we take it over, it's ours.
absolutely.
And that's where I think the Granicus or those third parties where they are looking at the listing and ensuring you're
Absolutely.
not
Mhm.
advertising for that. And I don't think putting any new rules.
No.
Just
Oh, no.
ensuring that the current,
The current
rules are
regulations are
being
being
followed.
followed is really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Okay, other business. Connie?
So
Her brook?
the brook, trying to find the money. So that will be, as you know. Well, that will be, and that will be a village budget item. So it will talk about, the village is going to have to consider bonding for that money to fix that culvert. And that's another option, but when you wait for the state, we could wait another 2 or 3 years, and I'm not prepared to do that. As I've told, we've had these conversations. They were, so that was part of, we had the river program that was here, that was not a project that they selected. So the state could help with the funding, that's the other option right now, but we're gonna have to come up with some of it. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I know and I'll, what year was that paved, Commonwealth? That's right. I'll talk to Ron and we can at least feather that, maybe put some filling to take care of the end of the driveway. Sure. Yeah. No, I'll talk with the highway department tomorrow. Mhm. So. Okay. And I know they're aware of it, so. I'll get it out this week. Whether I have to pull it out myself.
I'll help you.
Yeah, they cleaned it out, yeah. Now, I think they gotta walk the little excavator over there and pull it out. There's nobody there. We'll get it out of there.
Okay, anything else under other business? Possible items for next meeting. November 4th.
It will be, all I can say is that the rental regulations will be on there because it's already been requested. Of me to have it on there by multiple folks.
Okay, warrant orders have been signed. Executive session.
I do,
Okay,
briefly,
for
personnel.
executive, need a motion go in executive session for personnel.
I just had a couple things before we, bathroom at transfer station.
Yeah, so that is, was awarded to High Country Contractors as ordered. We decided just 2 weeks ago to put a heavy duty lid on the tank unit just in case, because where it is, in case somebody drives over it. So that's ordered. I think it's gonna be here by the end of the week, then now construction will begin, so that should be done within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would think.
Do I need a motion to
I'll
go
make a
in?
motion to go into executive session for personnel.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed, guys have it.